Most people have this completely backwards. When they think about a narcissist losing control over someone, they imagine the narcissist simply moving on, shrugging, finding someone else. Because that's the image, isn't it? The cold, powerful, untouchable person who never truly cared anyway. The person who could drop you and feel absolutely nothing because to them you were always replaceable. That image is wrong, not slightly wrong. Fundamentally, structurally, psychologically wrong. And the reason that image persists, the reason so many people believe it, is because narcissists work very, very hard to make sure you believe it. But here's what's actually happening beneath that mask. When a narcissist begins to lose control over you, when you stop reacting the way you used to, when you stop jumping to their commands, when you start seeing through the performance they've spent years perfecting, something happens inside them that they will never let you see, something they are genuinely terrified of you discovering. They panic. Not the quiet, reflective kind of panic, not the kind that leads to growth or self-examination, raw, desperate, destabilizing panic, the kind that comes when the floor drops out from under a person's entire psychological reality. And in the next 30 minutes, you are going to understand exactly why that panic happens, what it looks like from the outside, and most importantly, what it reveals about the person who spent so much time trying to convince you that you were the one who needed to be fixed. By the time this video ends, you will never see this dynamic the same way again. Stay with me. Let's start with the belief that keeps so many people stuck far longer than they should be. The belief goes something like this. The narcissist in your life seems so confident, so self-assured, so genuinely indifferent to whether you were happy or unhappy, comfortable or suffering, staying or leaving. And because they seemed indifferent, you began to believe, at some level, that you were the one who cared more, that you were the one with something to lose, that if this relationship ever ended, you would be the one devastated, and they would walk away without a scratch. That belief is one of the most effective illusions a narcissist creates, and it is completely inverted from reality. Here is what you need to understand. The narcissist's apparent indifference is not emotional strength. It is a performance. And like all performances, it requires an audience. It requires your continued presence, your continued reaction, your continued emotional investment in the dynamic. Because without those things, the performance has nowhere to land, and the performer has no idea who they are. Think about that for a moment. The person who seemed most in control of your relationship was actually the most dependent person in it. Not dependent in the way you may have been, dependent on connection, on love, on genuine understanding, dependent in a far more fragile way, dependent on your reaction to know they exist, dependent on your compliance to feel powerful, dependent on your confusion to feel superior, which means the moment you stop providing those things, the moment you stop reacting, stop complying, stop being confused, their entire psychological structure begins to shake. And most people never realize this because the narcissist does everything in their power to make sure you are too busy doubting yourself to notice what is happening to them. But we are going to notice right now. To truly understand what happens when a narcissist loses control of you, you have to understand why they needed control in the first place. And this is where most explanations get it wrong. Most explanations tell you that narcissists want control because they are selfish, because they are power hungry, because they enjoy dominating other people. And while those things may be partially true at the behavioral level, they completely miss the deeper psychological reality. Narcissists don't pursue control because they are strong. They pursue it because without it, they have nothing to stand on. Here's the foundation you need. Somewhere in the development of a narcissistic personality, a core self, a stable, grounded, internally secure sense of identity, never fully formed. What formed instead was a constructed self, an elaborate, carefully maintained persona built from external feedback, external admiration, and external control. A structure that looks impressive from the outside but has no real foundation beneath it. Psychologists call the fuel that keeps this structure alive narcissistic supply. And supply is not just flattery or compliments, though those are part of it. Supply is any form of response from another person that confirms the narcissist's constructed identity. It can be admiration, it can be fear, it can be your tears, it can be your confusion, it can be your anger, it can be your love. What matters is not the type of response. What matters is that the response is happening, that you are reacting to them, that they are affecting you, that they are real to themselves through your eyes. Now, here's the critical thing. When you are in a relationship with a narcissist, any relationship, romantic, familial, professional, you become a primary source of that supply. Your reactions, your emotional investment, your presence in their orbit all feed the constructed identity in ways they literally cannot replace overnight. You are not just a person to them, you are infrastructure. An infrastructure, when threatened, triggers a survival response. Not a sad response, not a reflective response, a survival response. Because at the deepest, most psychological level, the narcissist is not experiencing the possibility of losing you. They are experiencing the possibility of losing the mirror that shows them they exist. Keep that in mind, because it is the key to understanding everything that comes next. Now, the moment you change, maybe you have started to see through the patterns. Maybe you have stopped responding to the provocations the way you used to. Maybe you have pulled back emotionally, started setting a quiet boundary or two, started reacting with calm instead of chaos. Maybe you simply stopped being as available as you once were. From the outside, this might seem like a small shift. To the narcissist, it registers like an alarm. And here is what most people expect will happen next. They expect the narcissist to become cold, to withdraw, to suddenly seem unbothered, to demonstrate that show of indifference that narcissists are so famous for. But that is not the first thing that happens. Not when the threat is real and the loss of control is genuinely beginning. The first thing that happens is an escalation. The manipulation intensifies. The behaviors that were designed to destabilize you get louder, more frequent, more pointed. If the primary tool was guilt, you will now be drowning in guilt-inducing messages. If the primary tool was love bombing, suddenly the affection returns at a level that seems almost surreal compared to what came before. If the primary tool was criticism, the criticism sharpens to a precision that feels almost surgical. If the primary tool was triangulation, using other people to make you feel insecure, you will suddenly start hearing about those other people with remarkable frequency. And if you are not aware of what is happening, this escalation can be terrifying because it feels like the relationship is somehow more intense than ever, which can be deeply confusing for someone who is hoping for distance. But here is what you need to understand about that escalation. It is not confidence. It is not power. It is not the narcissist demonstrating that they are in control. The escalation is the first visible crack in the performance, because a person who is genuinely powerful, genuinely indifferent, genuinely unbothered by your changing behavior does not need to escalate. They simply let you go. The escalation is what happens when someone who built their entire psychological world on your predictable reactions suddenly finds those reactions becoming unpredictable. It is the equivalent of a person shaking a vending machine that stopped dispensing what they expected. The shaking is not strength. The shaking is frustration. The shaking is the beginning of panic wearing aggression's clothing. And when the escalation doesn't work, when you remain calm where once you would have been devastated, when you stay quiet where once you would have argued, when you look at them with clarity where once you looked at them with confusion, something genuinely significant happens, something they cannot hide from the way they hide everything else. There is a specific moment in this dynamic that is unlike any other. It is the moment the narcissist realizes the escalation is not working. Not suspects, it isn't working. Knows it isn't working. The moment when they watch you respond or not respond, and they feel, for perhaps the first time in this relationship, that they cannot predict you, that the patterns they studied, exploited, and relied on are no longer functioning, that the person they believed they had mapped completely has somehow become someone they don't entirely recognize. This moment has a name in psychology. It is called a narcissistic injury. And I want to be very precise about what a narcissistic injury is, because it is not what most people think. It is not simply hurt feelings. It is not disappointment. It is not the ordinary wound of rejection that any person might feel when a relationship begins to change. A narcissistic injury is what happens when external reality directly contradicts the narcissist's internal constructed identity. When the gap between who they believe themselves to be, powerful, superior, in complete control, immune to consequence, and what is actually happening in front of them becomes too wide to intellectually bridge. In ordinary people, this gap creates growth. It creates the uncomfortable but productive recognition that perhaps the picture they had of themselves was incomplete, that perhaps there is something worth examining, something worth changing. In a narcissist, this gap creates something very different. It creates a fracture in the constructed self, because there is no stable, genuine foundation beneath the performance to absorb the impact of that fracture. There is only the performance, and when the performance is failing, there is nothing to fall back on. Imagine, if you can, building your entire sense of who you are out of other people's reactions to you. Imagine that every conversation, every relationship, every interaction is essentially a mirror you carry with you, and your identity is what you see reflected in that mirror. Now imagine someone taking the mirror away, not just hiding it, taking it, leaving you in a room where no reflection exists. That is the psychological experience of a narcissist losing control over a primary source of supply. It is not heartbreak in the way you or I might understand heartbreak. It is something closer to existential vertigo. The ground moves, the constructed self, the one that told them they were untouchable, begins to vibrate. And from that vibration comes something you need to see clearly, the panic. Here is where things become something you will recognize immediately, because the panic does not stay internal. It cannot. A narcissist does not have the psychological capacity to sit with their own destabilization quietly and process it the way a self-aware person might. The panic has to go somewhere. It has to manifest externally. And it manifests in a very specific set of behaviors that, once you understand them as symptoms of panic rather than demonstrations of power, you will never mistake for strength again. The first response is the smear campaign. When a narcissist feels they are losing control of you, one of their most immediate instincts is to reach out to the people around you, mutual friends, family members, colleagues, anyone who exists in the shared social landscape, and begin quietly, methodically rewriting your story. Suddenly, you are unstable. You are difficult. You are the real problem in the relationship. You have changed. You are being unreasonable. You are the one who has behaved badly. Most people experience this as one of the most confusing and painful aspects of the entire dynamic. It feels like a betrayal that makes no logical sense. Why would someone who claims to care about you work to damage your reputation? But when you understand it as a panic response, the logic becomes clear immediately. The smear campaign serves two purposes simultaneously. First, it is a preemptive defensive maneuver. If the narcissist can establish you as the unstable or unreasonable one before you have the chance to tell your story clearly, your credibility is compromised before you even speak. Second, and this is the part people miss, it is an attempt to pull you back into the dynamic. Because if you hear what is being said about you, if it gets back to you that your reputation is being attacked, the hope, the narcissist's desperate, panicking hope, is that you will react, that you will confront them, that you will re-engage with the chaos. Because re-engagement, even angry re-engagement, is supply. It means you are still affected. It means the mirror is still functioning. It means control might not be entirely lost. The smear campaign is not revenge. It is an SOS signal. The second response is the Hoover. The word comes from the vacuum cleaner brand, and the imagery is deliberate. When the smear campaign doesn't pull you back, when you remain detached, when you don't take the bait, the narcissist often pivots dramatically to an attempt to suck you back into the relationship through warmth rather than conflict. Suddenly they become the person you always wished they were. The apologies appear. They may be the most genuine sounding apologies you've ever heard from them, full of apparent insight and remorse. The affection returns at an intensity that can feel genuinely moving. The promises are specific and detailed in a way they never were before. And if you have been holding on to any remaining hope that this person could change, this moment will test you in ways that few experiences in life will. But here is the psychological truth beneath the Hoover. The apparent insight, the apparent remorse, the apparent self-awareness, none of it comes from genuine internal growth. It comes from the same place the smear campaign came from: fear. The narcissist has observed with growing alarm that the usual tools are not working, so they reach for a different tool, one they know from past experience has been effective. And they deploy it not because they have changed, but because the panic of losing control has temporarily overridden even their usual resistance to vulnerability. The Hoover is not transformation. It is the performance reaching its most desperate act. The third response is the flying monkeys. When direct contact, and whether through the smear campaign or the Hoover, is not producing the desired result, some narcissists begin recruiting third parties, friends, family, mutual acquaintances, people who genuinely care about you and who the narcissist is able to frame the situation to convincingly. Suddenly, people in your life are reaching out to tell you that they are worried about the relationship, that they think you might be being too hard on this person, that they think you should give things another chance. This is extraordinarily effective because it comes from trusted sources. The person delivering the message genuinely believes they are helping. They have no idea they are functioning as an extension of the narcissist's panic management. And the insidious effectiveness of flying monkeys is precisely what reveals the depth of the narcissist's destabilization. Because mobilizing other people takes effort. It takes deliberate, systematic effort. It requires framing conversations, managing impressions, carefully deploying a version of events that makes the narcissist appear reasonable and you appear unreasonable. No one does that for someone they could simply walk away from. No one invests that kind of energy in a relationship they genuinely don't need. The fourth response is the false collapse. This one is perhaps the most emotionally dangerous for the person on the receiving end. When everything else has failed, when the smear campaign, the Hoover, and the flying monkeys have all not produced the desired effect, some narcissists will appear to completely fall apart. Sudden emotional breakdowns, expressions of profound helplessness, suggestions of self-harm, declarations that they cannot function without you. This performance targets the one thing that remains powerful in the person the narcissist has been trying to control: their empathy. Because the people narcissists tend to target are precisely the people who will find it very difficult to walk away from someone who appears to be genuinely suffering. The empathic, the compassionate, the people who believe that love means showing up for someone even when it's hard, those are the people this response is calibrated for. I want to be very clear about something here. Genuine mental health crises are real and serious, and they deserve compassionate response. But there is a pattern to the false collapse that distinguishes it from genuine distress. It appears precisely when the narcissist is losing control. It escalates proportionally to the degree of your detachment, and it tends to resolve with remarkable speed the moment you re-engage with the dynamic. The timing is not coincidental. The timing is the tell. The fifth response is the one most people never expect: silence. Not your silence. Their silence, a sudden, complete, total withdrawal that appears without warning and feels, from the outside, like the narcissist has suddenly become the one who doesn't care. And if you have been watching all of the previous escalation responses, this silence can feel genuinely confusing, like a switch was flipped, like the person who was just deploying every tool in their arsenal suddenly became genuinely indifferent. But this silence is nothing like the silence of someone who has genuinely processed the relationship and made peace with its end. This silence is a weapon. It is the final calculated attempt to provoke a reaction in you by performing the very indifference they want you to believe they have always felt. It is designed to make you reach out, to make you wonder, to reactivate your anxiety, to make you feel suddenly that you are the one who might be losing something. Because if you reach out, the balance of control shifts back immediately. If you reach out, they win. But here is what all five of these responses, the smear campaign, the Hoover, the flying monkeys, the false collapse, and the punishing silence, share at their core. They are all asking the same question: why aren't you reacting anymore? And that question, beneath all the aggression and manipulation and performance, is where the real fear lives. Not in any specific behavior, in the question itself, because that question could only exist if your reaction truly mattered. And something that truly matters to a person is something that person is genuinely afraid of losing. Now we arrive at the deepest layer, the one that will reframe the entire relationship if you let it. Throughout everything we have discussed, there has been an assumption running quietly beneath the surface. The assumption that when a narcissist is panicking over losing control of you, they are panicking over losing you specifically, over the love, the connection, the person. That assumption is not entirely wrong, but it is not the full picture. And the full picture is what truly shifts the power in this dynamic. What a narcissist fears most when they lose control of you is not your absence. It is what your freedom says about them. Here is why that matters. The narcissist's constructed identity, the powerful, superior, in-control version of themselves that they have built and maintained with extraordinary effort, is only coherent as long as the people around them behave in ways that confirm it. You, specifically, have been a piece of evidence in the narcissist's argument to themselves about who they are. Your compliance confirmed their power. Your confusion confirmed their superiority. Your pain confirmed their significance. Your love confirmed their worth. Your reactions, all of them, even the ones that hurt you, were data points in the story they told themselves about themselves. And when you stop providing those data points, when you become calm where you were chaotic, clear where you were confused, free where you were controlled, you are not just withdrawing from the relationship. You are withdrawing your confirmation of their identity. And that means something shattering at the deepest level of the narcissist's psychology. It means the story might not be true. It means that if someone who knew them this closely, this intimately, this completely, if someone who saw the real behavior behind the performance can simply walk away and be okay, then perhaps the image they have maintained so carefully is not the truth. Perhaps the power was never real. Perhaps the superiority was constructed from borrowed reactions rather than genuine substance. Perhaps the person beneath the performance is someone far more frightened, far more fragile, far more empty than the mask has ever let anyone see. That is not a comfortable realization for anyone. For a person with a narcissistic structure, it is catastrophic because they have no psychological framework to absorb it. They have no inner self that can say, I am more than other people's reactions to me. There is only the performance. And you, by becoming free, are standing in front of that performance with the lights on. This is why the panic is real, not performed panic, not strategic panic, genuine psychological terror expressed through every behavior we have described, because the alternative, sitting quietly with the reality that the mirror is gone and there is nothing behind it, is something the constructed self cannot survive. And once you understand that, something profound happens for you. I want to speak directly to you for a moment. If you have recognized yourself in any part of this dynamic, if you have been the person they tried to control, the person whose reactions they fed from, the person who spent time confused, doubting yourself, wondering if perhaps you were the problem, I want you to sit with what you now understand. The chaos you lived through was not evidence of your weakness. It was evidence of your value as a target. Narcissists do not invest this level of energy, this level of complexity, this level of psychological architecture in people who mean nothing to them. The sophisticated manipulation, the escalation, the panic responses, none of that is deployed against someone easily replaceable. It is deployed against someone whose departure genuinely threatens the entire constructed world. And here's the thing about clarity. There is a specific moment that everyone in this situation eventually reaches if they stay long enough to see through the performance. It is not an explosive moment. It does not arrive with anger, though anger may be part of it. It arrives quietly, with the particular weight of a truth you have been circling for a long time finally landing at the center. The moment when you realize that you were never confused about who you were. You were deliberately kept confused about who they were. Those are completely different things. The doubt that colonized your internal world, the am I too sensitive, the maybe I expected too much, the perhaps I am the difficult one. That doubt was not your intuition speaking. It was the result of an extremely deliberate, extremely calculated campaign to keep you from seeing the person behind the campaign clearly. And now you see them clearly, not with contempt, not with hatred, with clarity, which is something far more powerful than either of those emotions. Clarity does not need to perform anything. Clarity does not need to argue or prove or re-engage. Clarity simply looks at what is real and makes its decisions accordingly. When you stop reacting to a narcissist, when you achieve genuine calm in the face of what used to devastate you, when the escalation no longer lands, when the Hoover no longer tempts, when the flying monkeys no longer move you, you are not becoming cold. You are not becoming like them. You are doing something they are psychologically incapable of doing for themselves. You are choosing reality over performance. And that choice is the most threatening thing in the world to someone whose entire existence depends on controlling the reality around them. Your peace is not passive. Your peace is power. And the panic you see in their response to your peace is the clearest confirmation you will ever receive that the power was always yours. It was always yours. They simply borrowed it through your confusion. Now you have it back. But there is one final thing, one thing that ties every layer of this together. And it is the last piece of the psychological picture that most people in this situation never fully see. There is a question that haunts nearly everyone who has been through this kind of relationship. A question that tends to surface at 2 in the morning or in the middle of an ordinary Tuesday, or sometimes right when you finally feel like you are doing better. Did any of it mean anything to them? It is an honest question, a human question. One that deserves an honest answer. Here's the truth, not the comfortable truth, the real one. To the narcissist, you were real. Your impact on them was real. The supply you provided was genuinely necessary, not manufactured, not pretended, genuinely necessary to the maintenance of the constructed self they have spent a lifetime building. The panic that emerges when they lose control of you is real panic, not performance. The desperation in the smear campaign, in the Hoover, in the flying monkeys, in the false collapse, in the punishing silence, all of it is real, in the sense that it is generated by genuine psychological distress. But here is what you also have to understand. That reality has nothing to do with love. It has nothing to do with knowing you. It has nothing to do with valuing who you actually are. the full, complex, specific, irreplaceable person you are. Because to love someone, truly love someone, requires the ability to see them, to be curious about them, to care about their inner experience independently of what that experience provides for you. And a narcissist cannot do that, not because they are evil, not because they chose to be incapable, but because the psychological structure that would make that kind of love possible, the stable inner self, the capacity for genuine empathy, the willingness to exist in a relationship without needing to control its every variable, was never built. What is there instead is a hollow, constructed architecture that requires constant external maintenance and responds to any threat to that maintenance, with the full panic of a person who has nothing to fall back on. You were not seen by this person. You were needed by this person. And those two things can look identical from the inside of the relationship while being utterly different in nature. You were needed the way a mirror is needed by someone who cannot locate themselves without a reflection. You were needed the way a stage is needed by a performer who has never learned how to exist off it. You were needed completely and genuinely and desperately, and none of that need was love. And understanding that distinction, truly internalizing it, is not a sad conclusion. It is the most liberating sentence you will ever hear about this relationship. Because you did not fail to be loved by someone capable of loving you. You were simply not seen by someone who was not capable of seeing. And you cannot fix that. You could not have fixed that. All the explaining, all the patience, all the hope, all the attempts to be understood, none of it could have built what was never there to begin with. Not because you weren't enough, because the capacity to receive you was never present in the first place. And so, when a narcissist can't control you anymore, they panic. And the panic is real. And the panic is, if you let yourself see it clearly, the most honest thing they will ever show you. More honest than any apology. More honest than any love bombing. More honest than any constructed display of indifference. Because the panic tells the truth about what the whole relationship always was. It tells you that the power was real. Your presence mattered at a level they could never afford to admit. Your departure, your clarity, your peace, your freedom is the single thing their constructed world cannot accommodate, which means that every moment you choose yourself, every moment you remain calm in the face of their escalation, every moment you see through the Hoover, every moment you stand in your own clarity rather than returning to their chaos, you are doing something they will spend enormous energy trying to prevent you from doing. You are being free. And a narcissist experiencing someone they could not control walking freely into their own life, calm, clear, and done, is not experiencing indifference. They are experiencing the one thing their entire psychological architecture was built to avoid, the truth. And the truth is this: you were never as controllable as they needed you to be. You just didn't know that yet. Now you do. That's the verdict.